The table set with stories untold, whispers linger in the marrow's hold. A feast of shadows on porcelain white. Was it care or venom served that night? Did the dust of death fall by her hand, or fate's cruel twist in life's demand? Questions echo through the courtroom's air. Guilt or innocence, does she even care? The forest yields both gift and curse, a healer's touch or a witch's verse, a simmered brew, a secret steeped, a love betrayed or secrets deep. Did the dust of death fall by her hand, or fate's cruel twist in life's demand? Questions echo through the courtroom's air. Guilt or innocence, does she even care?
Good evening, and welcome to the Defence Rest special edition of the Death Cap murder trial. Now, in a quiet country town of Leongatha, Victoria, which is about an hour and a half's drive east of here, a family lunch turned deadly in July 2023. 3 people died and 1 barely survived after allegedly consuming beef Wellington that was contaminated with one of the world's deadliest fungi, the death cap mushroom. Tonight, we're going to bring you a comprehensive chronological account of this shocking case that has captivated not only Australia, but the world. But before we delve into the case's details, it's important to understand what makes this story so chilling. Death cap mushrooms, scientifically known as Amanita phalloides, I'm sure I absolutely annihilated that one, among the most lethal fungi on the planet. Unlike commercial varieties, these deadly mushrooms cannot be cultivated. They grow exclusively in the wild and typically at the base of certain trees. In Victoria, they're rare, but they are most prevalent in the month of May. When ingested, death caps trigger a devastating sequence in the human body. The initial symptoms are severe vomiting and diarrhea, which typically begin between 6 and 24 hours after consumption. These symptoms may temporarily subside, creating a false sense of recovery before the poison silently attacks the liver and the kidneys. Without emergency intervention, multiple organ failure follows, often leading to death within days. At the centre of this case is 50-year-old Erin Patterson, a mother of 2 children aged 9 and 14. Separated from her husband Simon Patterson, they maintained what appeared to be an amicable relationship, sharing custody of their children. The Patterson family continued to have extended family holidays. The Patterson family included Simon's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, both aged 70, and his aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian Wilkinson. Now, Ian Wilkinson served as a pastor at the local church where Erin and Simon worshipped. But beneath this seemingly normal family dynamic, prosecutors allege a darker reality was brewing. Now, court evidence has revealed a digital trail that prosecutors claim laid the groundwork for what would follow. Between March and May of 2023, Erin's browsing history showed searches on a website called iNaturalist, where local users had reported death cap mushroom sightings near Leongatha. Now, cell tower data placed her phone in these same areas during this period. Digital forensics expert Matthew Sorrell testified that Patterson's phone had pinged near areas known for death cap mushroom growth in May 2023, suggesting she may have been in locations where she could have forged foraged the poisonous mushrooms. Now, I hope you'll note that given the fact that we are in Australia and we don't have the same freedoms and liberties with regards to transparency in the court system, this is as good as it gets. In fact, this compilation exists of approximately 30 different mini episodes of updates and highlights of the case that I had to string together to create an actual story. And even when there was no visuals, it was all oral, done on podcasting, and even the witness testimonies and any quotes made by the judge were all done by actors. So next time your court for TV feed audio goes down, don't complain. This is what we have to look up. But there's a plus side. There's not all of those semicircle graphs that you have to look at with mobile phone extraction data and listening to all the digits. I've saved you the trouble. You get to look at mushrooms instead. Notably, mycologist Dr. Thomas May had posted images and locations of the death cap mushrooms in Outram, Victoria, shortly before Patterson allegedly visited the area. Now, during this same time frame, Erin joined a Facebook group dedicated to discussing Kelly Lane. It's a former Australian water polo player that was convicted of murdering her newborn daughter back in 1996. In this group chat, Erin allegedly shared messages about how she was dehydrating the mushrooms and then blitzing them into powder and hiding powdered mushrooms in everything, including chocolate brownies she allegedly made for her children without their knowledge. The invitation. So back in late July 2023, Erin attended the church services where she normally went and extended an invitation to both Don and Gail Patterson, along with Ian and Heather Wilkinson, to join her for lunch at her Leongatha home. She also invited her estranged husband Simon. Now, the pretext for this gathering, according to prosecutors, was that Erin claimed to have been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and wanted advice about how to break this news to their children. Now, evidence obviously has come to light since then because there is a stipulation that both the prosecution and the defence both agree that she has never been diagnosed with cancer. Simon Patterson declined the invitation via text message, telling Erin that he didn't feel comfortable attending after their relationship had once again soured. The prosecution claimed that Erin appeared quite upset by this and really persisted and wanted him to attend. She claimed that she'd spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make the beef Wellington because she wanted it to be a special meal, and that she may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. Gaslighting, perhaps? So, on Saturday, July 29th, Don and Gail Patterson, along with Ian and Heather Wilkinson, arrived at Erin's Leongatha home for lunch. Erin had prepared individual beef Wellingtons. It's pretty much described as a piece of steak covered with mushrooms and completely encased in pastry, and it is quite difficult to cook. Now, the sole survivor, Ian Wilkinson, the pastor, testified that Patterson was reluctant to let guests inspect her pantry and declined offers to help plate the beef Wellington. A critical detail noted by both prosecutors and Wilkinson was that Erin served herself on a visibly different coloured plate, smaller and lighter in colour compared to the guests' larger grey ones. Heather and Gail helped move 4 large grey plates from the kitchen bench to the dining table, while Erin took the smaller, lighter coloured plate to her place at the table. Now, this difference in tableware would later become significant evidence in the case. The group said grace before eating. Ian, Heather, and Donald consumed their entire portions, while Gail ate about half and gave the remainder to her husband. The guest reportedly commented on how delicious the meal was. After the meal, Erin allegedly told the group about her cancer diagnosis and asked for their advice about informing their children. The group prayed for her well-being before departing for their homes. That same evening, all 4 lunch guests began experiencing severe symptoms: violent vomiting and diarrhea. You'd want to hope you had at least 2 toilets in the home. Their conditions deteriorated rapidly. On the Sunday morning on July 30th, Erin called her estranged husband Simon, claiming she'd been experiencing diarrhea since the previous evening. However, prosecutors would later present CCTV evidence showing Erin driving her son to a flying lesson that afternoon without any apparent urgency to use restroom facilities. Additional footage showed her entering and exiting a public toilet at a service station, or a servo, as we call them here. You call them gas stations, in just 9 seconds. I don't even think she could have washed her hands in that time. That's not behaviour that's consistent with someone suffering with severe gastrointestinal distress. By the Monday morning, July the 31st, the victim's conditions had worsened significantly. While waiting for an ambulance, Heather Wilkinson made a critical observation to Simon Patterson, saying, "I noticed that Erin put her food on a different plate to us. Her plate had colours on it, and I wondered why that was." That same morning, Erin presented herself at the Leongatha Hospital Urgent Care Clinic. Doctors had just learned that the Pattersons and Wilkinsons might have been poisoned by death cap mushrooms and urged Erin to be admitted immediately. Now, according to to court testimony, Erin was extremely reluctant to be hospitalised, repeatedly stating, "I haven't come prepared to be admitted to hospital, and I was just coming to be checked." She signed a discharge form against medical advice and left, promising to return in 20 minutes. She only returned and agreed to a medical assessment after being told the police would be contacted. Dr. Mark Douglas from Monash Health testified that the victims exhibited symptoms consistent with death cap mushroom poisoning. However, Erin Patterson showed no clinical signs of such poisoning, despite claiming that she'd consumed the same meal. Nurse Miriam Sespin recounted Patterson's hospital visit, noting her emotional state and concern for her children, who had consumed leftovers. When Dr. Webster bluntly told her the children could be scared and alive or dead, Erin agreed to have them evaluated. All 3 were transferred to the MES Medical Centre and kept overnight for observation. Medical records would later indicate that it was unlikely that she'd been poisoned at the lunch. While Erin was at the hospital, police searched her home and recovered a bag of leftover beef Wellington from her bin. These remains were sent to experts at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne for analysis. As the victims' conditions deteriorated further, police intensified their investigation. On August the 3rd, 2023, Erin allegedly disposed of a food dehydrator at a nearby landfill. On August 4th, police recovered that dehydrator, which was later found to contain death cap mushroom residue and bore Erin's fingerprints. On August 5th, Gail Patterson, Don Patterson, and Heather Wilkinson died from multiple organ failure due to the mushroom poisoning. Forensic analysis revealed that both the leftover mushroom paste from the beef Wellington and the residue from Patterson's food dehydrator contained deadly amatoxins, the toxins that are found in the death cap mushroom. This contradicts Patterson's claim that she used store-bought mushrooms. Ian Wilkinson, though critically ill, would eventually survive after extensive hospitalisation. The pastor became a widower following his wife's death. Police executed 2 search warrants on Erin's home, one in August and another in November. During one raid, while given permission to use her phone to arrange legal representation and childcare, Erin allegedly performed a factory reset on the device, an action she would reportedly repeat twice more, including once remotely after police had seized the phone. A digital forensics officer testified that a Samsung phone linked to Patterson had been factory reset multiple times, including once while in police custody, rendering its data irretrievable. Additionally, her tablet contained images of mushrooms and internet searches related to cancer. Now, her daughter also took the stand and testified about the call that she had with the police that was played to the jury. She told the police that the day after the meal, Patterson had begun feeling unwell and used the bathroom 10 times over the course of the day. She just needed to go to the toilet a lot and she felt sick in her gut, she said. Registered nurse Cindy Monroe assessed Patterson in the hospital, who had reportedly been having nausea and diarrhea, but the nurse said her appearance was completely different from the other lunch guests. The next day, her son also took the stand. 14-year-old had an interview with the police and was heard by the court. He said that their relationship in the months before the deadly beef Wellington lunch was very negative, and also said that his mother had moved houses around 7 years prior to the lunch and after having a few arguments with his father, Simon, although the couple never divorced. "I know Dad does a lot of things to try and hurt Mum," he was heard saying. The jury was told Patterson served her children the leftover steak and beans from the lunch for their dinner. The search history on a computer from Mrs. Patterson's home about death cap mushrooms had been visited 14 months prior to the incident. One of the phones in the house had been factory reset 3 times in the week after that lunch. And digital forensic analysis Shaman Fox Hendry said there was pictures of a yellowy dried mushrooms in a food dry dehydrator found on that Samsung tablet. Photos that were taken of mushrooms in May 23 included some inside of that food hydrator, and the tablet was seized by police and also shown to the jury. The prosecution has alleged Patterson lied about buying mushrooms from an Asian grocer and disposing of a food dehydrator, and said that she had lied about becoming sick after the lunch. Defence barrister Colin Mandy said Patterson had panicked after the episode. He said Patterson admitted that she'd gotten rid of the dehydrator and that made her look guilty, and then lied about getting rid of it. Now, the court was taken to a Facebook group chat that was retrieved from another phone in the house. There, messages from an account named Erin, not I hit him, expressed frustration with Simon Patterson, who was labelled as a deadbeat dad. Criticism was also levelled at his parents, Don and Gail, because they chose to stay out of a dispute over child support payments. Well, it really isn't any of their business. And they did the right thing. "I'm sick of this shit. I want nothing to do with them," said one of the messages, sent about 8 months before the lunch. "I thought his parents would want him to do the right thing, but it seems they're concerned about not wanting to feel uncomfortable and not wanting to get involved in his son's personal matters are overwriting them. So fuck them." Right. Okay. Lovely attitude. So, the murder charges and 2 attempted murder charges relate to an incident on that July 29th of that year when Heather Gail, and Don Patterson all died after allegedly eating a beef Wellington cooked by Patterson at her home. As I said, Ian Wilkinson, the Baptist church pastor, was the only survivor from that lunch and spent nearly 2 months in hospital in a critical but stable condition. Now, I don't know why, but nowhere was it written in the court documents that showed this finding. I only stumbled over it while I was going through some articles. Now, apparently, there was what they called a creepy death wall that was found in the kitchen at the former home of Erin Patterson. Red and blue markers were used to scrawl eerie drawings and messages over the wall, with one chilling note reading, "You don't have long to live." So I included some photos for you. One of the workers that found it said that, "I've looked at it and gone, holy shit, what the hell's going on here?" Haunting images show red, blue, and black graffiti on the kitchen wall. One chilling drawing shows 2 stick figures with the words, "I am dead," and "No, I am really dead." Beside them appear to be 3 tombstones with the words, "Grandma, Hannah, and me, R.I.P." Other parts read, "You don't have long to live, 1 hour exactly. You're dead from my sword, and get ready." Now, that really sounds like a still individual to me. The painter added, "We started calling it the death wall." I went, "This is actually really scary for kids to do this inside the kitchen dining room. It just didn't look right to me as a parent," he said. And apparently Erin explained the markings happened when the kids were there and she'd gone out for a while. That's pretty scary. So, nearly 2 years after that fatal lunch, Erin Patterson faces trial at the Supreme Court in Morwell, Victoria. Now, she is also pretty much at the same level as Karen Read, given that she has been on trial for 4 weeks, heading into the 5th week, and the prosecution is about to wind up their case, and the defence is about to start. She's been charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder, and she's pleading not guilty on all charges. The trial actually began on April 30th of 2025 with a jury of 15. Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers delivered a 3.5-hour opening statement outlining the prosecution's case. Erin deliberately poisoned her former in-laws after researching and collecting death cap mushrooms. She served her guests on different plates from her own to avoid ingesting the poison herself. She falsely claimed illness to cover up her lack of symptoms. She disposed of evidence, the dehydrator, to conceal her actions. And she used cancer as a false pretext to gather the victims for the fatal meal. She repeatedly lied to investigators and tampered with electronic evidence. And then, in contrast, the defence, led by Colin Mandy, led a 30-minute opening. The poisonings were a terrible accident. Erin panicked in the aftermath because she was overwhelmed by the situation, and whilst she did forage for mushrooms and initially lied about it, she never intentionally sought death caps. Her questionable behaviour stemmed from panic, not guilt. She had no discernible motive to kill her former in-laws. In a notable point of agreement, both prosecution and defence acknowledged that under Australian law, the Crown does not need to prove motive to secure a murder conviction, only that the accused committed the act with intent. So, at the end of all that, it's very similar to US law. Now, there's several pieces of compelling evidence that have been presented during the trial. Prosecutors introduced the Facebook messages retrieved from Patterson's devices in which she expressed strong animosity towards her in-laws, and in these messages she referred to them as a lost cause and her estranged husband as a deadbeat. These communications suggested deep-seated resentment and familial tensions, particularly over the child support and financial dispute. The testimonies from Patterson's estranged husband, Simon, and other family members revealed the strained relationships and prior conflicts. Simon Patterson described his wife's behaviour as extremely aggressive in the months leading up to the incident. And Patterson gave conflicting accounts of where she sourced the mushrooms, citing Woolworths and an Asian grocer, which investigators challenged. She also later claimed that she had never dehydrated food, contradicting evidence found at the landfill. So as the trial continues, with the expected duration of 5 to 6 weeks, the prosecution continues calling witnesses. The daily proceedings run from 10:30 a.m. to just after 4 p.m. at the Morwell Courthouse. For now, the fundamental question remains unanswered. Was this a case of premeditated murder by mushroom poisoning, or a tragic cooking accident followed by panic-induced poor decisions? The jury's task: to determine beyond a reasonable doubt whether Erin Patterson deliberately ended 3 lives with a deadly dinner. Justice Christopher Beale has cautioned jurors again, seeking information outside of the courtroom to ensure a fair trial, highlighting the high-profile nature of this case. Now, if you actually went to Morwell and to this courthouse, high profile, it's not really the description that I'd give it. But nonetheless, it's still a tragedy. All right. Well, if you've enjoyed today's rendition of the first half of the trial, please consider hitting that like and subscribe. And we will come back to you when the trial's over and keep you updated. Stay safe.